I am so excited to have my very, very longtime dear friend, Robin Johnson, calling in all the way from Mallorca, where it's much later than it is here. And we haven't talked in a long time, Robin. I can't even remember. It could maybe be a year or two since we've talked.
I think so. I think it has been.
Which is too long. I should really do, the Facebook one is pretty good to keep in touch I found out, if you do the messenger by phone. But
Yeah.
I've got to try that. Of course, we did WhatsApp in the past, but it's just, sometimes the distance is like, oof. But I do get your wonderful emails. You have a wonderful newsletter that you're religiously putting out with all kinds of great information. Is it once a month you put that out?
Thank you. I put it out, it probably averages once a month, maybe a little more frequently, depending on what's happening, what's going on.
Well, let's give people a little background. Let's go into a little history before we get into what I really want to share with you, some great information you sent in the last newsletter. But Robin and I knew each other from way back when here on Maui, when you lived on Maui. Where did you live when you lived on Maui? Is it up country you lived?
Yeah, we lived up country in Haiku and then Keokea.
Oh, I love Keokea too, yeah. You and your husband, Cody, and your husband, Cody, was a brilliant music programmer and understood, it was, at that time, it was New Age music. It was called New Age at that time, wasn't it? About 25 years ago?
But we had, on Kauai, we had Traffic Jazz.
Yes.
And then 21 Degrees North.
And it was wonderful. And I miss it. I miss it. And then you started this, very successful program of you were one of the first to have spiritual teachers come and do fabulous seminars. I met some wonderful people at your wonderful events, including James Redfield, I remember. And you had huge talks. What was the name of that group you started back then?
Well, our website has always been greatmystery.org, and we started this. Initially we were producing concerts, and then we moved into metaphysics, and by bringing over people that we loved. So we thought, well, we'll bring these people to Maui, and maybe somebody else would like to come and join, and if not, we'll have a great time. So it was like with Stan Groff and Gabrielle Roth and Terrence McKenna and, like you said, James Redfield, and then that evolved into a conference format, which were initially called the Prophets Conference.
Right.
Because it was before the millennium.
Yes.
And there was so much about prophecy, indigenous prophecy, UFOs, and what was being discovered in quantum physics. And with people like Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson and Andrew Harvey, and it was fabulous.
It
was sharing all
amazing.
these ideas.
I love that, and it was before it kind of became the fad to have that. And I remember going to one in New Mexico that you had with Greg Braden was there, and so many amazing people. It was one of the best, and somewhere along the way you decided to move. What caused you? What caused you to leave and move to Europe?
Well, first we left Hawaii and moved to Santa Fe, and that was because, sometimes you get that little voice in your head, and every time we would do a conference on the mainland United States, we get this voice that we needed to be there, and then of course we come back to Maui, and it's like, oh, that must have been like a dream, nonsense, But it kept getting louder, and so we realized nothing bad would happen if we didn't, but something was wanting to express itself.
Uh-huh.
And as soon as we moved, our business just blossomed.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we could reach more people more easily being based there.
I think you're
right. And then it was, again, a second thing. And it was like another stage in our life. And where do we want to be now? And we had come on a scouting trip, actually, to Europe, looking for places to do conferences and tours. And went to Egypt and Amsterdam and Tuscany and Ibiza for the music, for the chill-out music, and came to Mallorca and drove around the island and stopped in a little village called Dea for lunch. And and that was it.
It was love at
It
first.
just
Love at
it
first
was
lunch.
love at first sight.
Love at first lunch.
Exactly, that was it.
Well, it took me a long time to actually get there, and I'm trying to remember now. It's got to be about 6 years, maybe 5, 6 years ago. I finally made it, because I mean, it sounded so fascinating. And Dea, of course, has an amazing history, which I was not aware of at all. I was aware of Mallorca was a very hip place that a lot of Europeans like to go to for a vacation, and it was kind of like the in spot for a lot of artists, writers, hip, sophisticated people, musicians, right? And but a lot of them would go to other areas. Is it La Palma or Las Palmas? Las Palmas?
No, well, Las Palmas is in the Canaries, but Palma de Mallorca
Palma
is
de
the
Mallorca.
capital city.
Right.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, I found out even hipper than Palma de, well, maybe not hipper. I won't call it that because you're living there now. But I mean, when I visited you and saw how amazingly beautiful this little small town is in the middle of the hills there with these gorgeous hotels and fabulous food restaurants and everything, I could see what drew you there. But what happened at that time when I came, by that time, your brilliant husband, Cody, had passed away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
which is why I moved from the village, which was so nurturing, but just needing a little change, and moved to the city.
Yeah. And then that was about, what, 5 years ago when you moved to the city?
Yeah, it was.
Palma de
5 years
Mallorca.
ago.
And I did have a chance to go back and visit you one time just for, I think, I stayed one night in Palma de Mallorca. And flew over. And it's really just a short hop from Barcelona. I think it's only
where you were.
Yeah, about a half-hour flight right over, and it wasn't hard at all to get to. And what a happening city! My gosh, it was very historical, but also very beautiful, and had that wonderful tropical feel about it, but a European tropical feel, right?
Yeah, it's like it's got such a nice, beautiful vibe. It's like the island of Mallorca, as you mentioned. So many people have come here. So it's a very international island. Dea, the village on the northwest side, is very bohemian, where Robert Graves came in the 20s and stayed. And so people like D.H. Lawrence and Anna Eastman and Henry Miller would come to visit him. And so a whole community of bohemian creative artists would live there, although the resident population is only about 400. And Palma, it just feels so golden. I mean, it's like Gaudi, did a lot of the architecture in the cathedral and in the old town. And it was founded in 123 BC by the Romans.
Wow.
I mean, everybody occupied it over the centuries. And they called it Palma because the port, when you come in, is in the shape of a palm, like a palm frond.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you then started recreating some amazing events through all of your great connections. I've lost a lot of my connections over the years, and I really respect you, Robin, because you really were able to stay in touch with a lot of wonderful people who you then would have do special events. Sometimes you'd have these conferences, and I've wanted to go so many times and came so close to coming to the conferences you do, sometimes on writing and sometimes on other women, the goddess workshops, and still we're doing amazing conferences, and a lot of those were still happening up in Dea, right?
Yeah, a lot of them were still happening in Dea or based out of Dea, and then, visiting the surrounding area, because actually what's so interesting about these Mediterranean islands is the temples and stuff here, or of course, are not at all sophisticated like the pyramids in Egypt, but they're before that time even.
Wow. So
there was a culture in the Mediterranean that extends into, like, especially Turkey and Syria, Malta, that was, we call it a goddess culture. They didn't call it a goddess culture. It was a partnership society. And where there was no war in all the artwork and everything, there's no weapons of war, no evidence, but there's this tremendous creativity and honoring of nature and the natural cycles, and they know there was gender equality because the men and women were buried equally with the same amount of stuff. like jewels or
Ah.
treasures, or
Ah.
so. Even though they had different functions in the society in terms of their value, they were valued equally.
Well, and I mean, when I follow some of the beautiful things you've been able to do there, they've all been enlightened workshops and so wonderful. But you've also continued on doing your lovely, sometimes online seminars and talks, and people can
Mhm.
still follow that through it. The site still for that is greatmystery.org, right?
Yes, and on I have a YouTube channel now,
Oh,
so
good.
many of the presentations we've done are now available for free.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
it's our channel's called Great Mystery Channel. That's it.
Oh, what's one? I did not know about that. That's fabulous. I'll have
Hmm.
to check that out for sure. Great Mystery
Yeah.
Channel. Now,
Hmm.
I still see your emails, and it's always interesting. And I do see posts sometimes on Facebook that you do. And fast forward to where we are today, which is like, okay, we're on Maui, and we're still doing quarantines. 14 days. We were going to open it up in August, but as you are probably aware, the situation in America is in pretty dire straits still.
Hmm.
With
Yeah.
a lot of unfortunate cases bouncing back because it was too soon to do the reopening. A lot of people were just so bored that they couldn't wait to just go back to like everything's normal, and it wasn't. So
Hmm.
we've been seeing not as many cases here, flatten the curve pretty much on Maui, but Oahu, with more people
Hmm.
coming in, has been ticking up a little bit. Now, you in Mallorca, what was the situation? When did you start feeling the stress of COVID-19, and what was the impact where you are in Mallorca?
The lockdown here started on March 14th
Wow.
or March 15th, and we were not allowed to go out of the house except for groceries and pharmacy or medical emergencies. No medical procedures if it wasn't an emergency, and we were asked not to go to the grocery market any more frequently than once a week.
Wow.
And it was like that for 2 months.
Wow. Long time. That was,
So
yeah, very,
long time, and of course, anytime going out, it was a mask and sanitizers
yeah.
and everything. And going into stores, you'd have to wear gloves. And however, the people here were so compliant that that the numbers dropped incredibly and significantly. And so then they started this process of slowly opening up and slowly extending and slowly doing things. And everything was working incredibly well until like 2 weeks ago when they opened up for tourism. And I was in Denmark 2 weeks ago. I was there for work doing healing treatments. And in Denmark, they only opened up to a couple countries for tourism. I think it was Norway, Sweden, not Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Germany, the ones that had really low cases. And because of that, they never had to wear masks. They did a whole social distancing. Everybody was super compliant, but they were allowed to go out and go for walks or exercise with social distancing. We were not in Spain. But, I've got to tell you, there were some fabulous things as a result, that came from this. For instance, the healthcare workers, were so overburdened that from the beginning of the lockdown, every night at 8 o'clock, everyone would go out on their balcony, terrace, out their window, and clap for the healthcare workers. And that happened for the whole 2 months. And it created such a sense of community. I met neighbors I never connected with before.
Wow.
And the police, because, people living in apartments and things like that, the police would, go down the streets with their sirens on, stop, get out of the cars, break out their guitars, and sing on the street.
Really?
And people would open up and sing along. It was like such
Amazing. Amazing.
it was so loving.
Oh,
it was
my.
it was very loving. And so, although the lockdown was very traumatic, I think probably for everybody in some way, there was an incredible amount of kindness through it as well.
So tell me, being just a half an hour from Barcelona, We know that Spain and Barcelona, and of course other countries, Italy, got hit hard. Did you have a quarantine period or just not allow other visitors? What was the policy about people coming in during that first couple months?
There was nobody coming in.
Uh-huh. So was it
Nobody coming in, even from mainland Spain.
Uh-huh.
Nobody was coming in.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it was totally isolated. And as a result, they were able to, take care of it.
Yeah.
So I think, whatever the story is behind the virus, which we may or may not ever know.
Agreed.
The fact is it's a real virus.
Mm-hmm.
And the masks and distancing and stuff made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, once it's under control, when we were opening up after that, it was okay. And it was only when people started coming in, I think especially from the UK, because they were not being compliant there,
Mm-hmm.
that the cases increased again. But we'll see where it goes.
So at this point, you're allowed to go out, but are you still wearing masks in Mallorca or not?
Yes.
You are.
Since the outbreak from the tourists, we now have to wear a mask on the street all the time. We have to wear a mask everywhere.
Mm. And
we can only not wear a mask if we're a single person in a car, or if we're a family that lives together in a car,
Uh-huh.
or if we're in a restaurant eating or drinking.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but otherwise, masks on.
So what about, because, it's in some ways, we're an island, obviously, too. And we're having a hard time economically. The unemployment rate here is extremely high. I think it's one of the highest in the country of the U.S. How did you, being an island and isolated, you do base your income, a lot of it, on tourism. How did you get affected by all this?
Well, it has affected, I think it's affected everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses have closed. There's a different system here for hotels and businesses where they can't open up without hiring back everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that makes it impossible.
Yeah, good
But
point.
they can only have like 30% capacity, let's say, because of
Yep.
the distancing and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's been
That's
incredibly
hard.
difficult
Yeah.
for businesses. And
the hotels and businesses support a lot of the restaurants, of course.
of course.
Yeah.
And so it's, I can only hope that as things are falling apart, something new is emerging, a new kind of economy, a new kind of way of working. One of the things I think was great that came out of the lockdown was, I think, for many people realizing that this obsession with shopping and buying and spending and materialism,
Yeah.
got really a wake-up call. Like, wow, we really don't need this stuff.
I haven't bought one new piece of clothing in 4.5 months. And I love clothes, but I haven't.
Yes.
and I'm not going to for a while because I gained so much weight because I was stress eating that I'm not going to buy clothes till I lose the weight that I gained. So,
I think, me too. I think everyone is like, we're all like several kilos more.
No, yes.
I've got all these great summer clothes that don't quite fit.
I've come to wearing skirts and dresses, loose skirts and dresses as my new wardrobe. Moo is not
so
quite, but
comfortable
yes, they're so comfortable.
Summer anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
We
want.
just have to love ourselves.
Well,
during the
that's.
journey. Yeah?
Thank you for that little bit of wisdom you snuck in there. We have to love ourselves, and that's a very important thing you just said there. We do have to love ourselves, and it's hard because there's been so much stress. Sometimes we forget that we're going through a very hard time, and we have to love ourselves. So thank you for that. Now, obviously, you've been impacted too because you usually do workshops. And I imagine any workshop you were going to do can't happen till maybe next year, right?
Yes. So things have been postponed till next year. I think, like many people, have found a way on. I do a training called Sky Yourself, which is a certification training for an emotional release technique that is so fabulous at healing trauma. The government in Germany will pay its social workers to take the training.
Wow.
But I have developed a way now, I'm going to be offering it in October, to do it online.
Oh, good.
And I think a lot of people have found ways of doing things online. And in a way, this is going to really help the environmental impact footprint, because even with businesses creatively during the lockdown, had to have their employees working from home. So I think, not having to travel, parents being home with their children, so I think there's like some new ways of working. I mean, it's fabulous to gather together, of course. There's nothing like being in person, and we're social beings. And in Europe, well, Spain especially, probably Italy too, it's such a cafe society.
Yes, true.
With people gathering together for their coffee in the morning and their newspaper or chatting with neighbors. And, it's such a social society in that way that being locked down was extremely stressful. But as that's opening up, I think other aspects of finding ways of working that are more kind to the environment. For instance, in Palma Bay, there used to be so many cruise ships. It was,
huge ships would come in.
Huge ships would come in. And because they couldn't, the dolphins were coming back into Palma Bay. I mean, everywhere, the wildlife. And I think it shows us how quickly nature can rebound when we just, press the pause button.
So true. I mean, no, there's been miraculous things like that around the world. I mean, some of the shots that came out of places even like China, Beijing, that's been so inundated with smog. When that happened, it was clear. And when, of course, you saw the pictures probably of the dolphins in Venice and some of the canals coming into the waters. And no, there's many stories of that. And I have to say the air here during the shutdown period was so crystal clear and so beautiful. And of course, at the same time, here we're seeing a lot of people who love to come not being able to. So we have this big issue now about when we're going to be able to reopen, which we're thinking at this point in Hawaii, on Maui, we're talking about September 1st, where there's not the 14-day quarantine. But who knows? It depends on the rest of the country and how well they are able to control this. But at the same time, we're all based on tourism. The hotels, the restaurants, many people are having to shut down, and it's tough. But it's interesting, island lifestyle here versus in Mallorca. I think we might have experienced some of the same things, except we don't have the history here that you have.
Yeah.
We have a different cultural, but I saw something. I want to talk to you. It actually was the reason I reached out to you, because I saw a post you posted the other day that was absolutely amazing. If you love animals and like to travel to new or favorite places but are feeling the pinch of this economic crisis, this may be for you. Okay, got my attention right anyway. It says, last summer you said, I was craving being someplace cool and green to escape the heat of Mallorca. And somehow I discovered Trusted House Sitters. And you said it should really be called Trusted Pet Sitters. I signed up and journeyed to Ireland, one of my favorite places, truly. Robin, I've been thinking I would, if I have to retire anytime, I'd love to go to Ireland, right? So you went there to Ireland to house/pet sit in the county of Mayo. Now, that's why I had to reach out to you. I said, this sounds like an amazing thing you found. So
oh my God.
I wanted you to share your experience. First of all, how did you hear about it in the first place?
I don't know. I don't know even how, but I started receiving these newsletters from this Trusted Pet Sitters, and it became so hot. And living in the city, which I love, there's many fabulous aspects, but it was like, I just need to be in nature in someplace cooler.
Yeah.
And this is the fabulous thing I discovered about. So, my first time in Ireland. So, I found this pet sit, which the woman is a high school teacher. She was in California. She was actually away for 5 weeks. So, there was a couple from Germany with a little girl who were there for the first 10 days. And then I came for the next 3.5 weeks. And it was 2 donkeys, 2 dogs, and 4 cats.
Amazing.
And she was so amazing also. She laid out the landscape for me, told me where to go, what to visit. She, because they drive on the other side of the road, I wasn't so comfortable driving because not only do they drive on the other side of the road, but, you know, I'm used to a manual shift, but with my right hand, their shift is with the left hand.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, anyway, it just felt a little too overwhelming. So she arranged this a neighbor of hers who's a taxi driver, gave me a great rate.
Wow.
And helped pay for my taxi fees. So I had such an amazing experience. And while there, I met another couple who were leaving in January to go to India for a month. And then I ended up coming back and staying with them. But what I discovered, and maybe, you know, this was my first time in Ireland. You've been there before. It reminded me so much of Hawaii. I could not believe it.
Perhaps even green. Perhaps even greener. It is so
it's
green.
Like something about the light.
Yeah.
And many of the plants are the same, and that smell of that damp green earth.
Yeah.
You know, and the light on the meadows, and oh my God, it's like fairyland, which is also, of course, Maui. And so that was like a big wow.
Okay, I have to ask you where,
I
I know I traveled around, I did the West Coast Inn, also in Dublin, drove around, but I can't remember where the county of Mayo is. Where is that in Ireland?
It is on the northwest side.
Okay.
I came back, so it's in the
above Shannon.
Ireland.
It's above
the country
Shannon.
of Ireland, like the European country, not part of the EU. I mean, not part of the UK.
Okay,
but
so
it's like more north and west. And then when I came back in January, I stayed in Westport, which I visited when I was there in the summer, and I fell in love with this village. It is one of the chieftains, the musicians, the chieftains is there, and it is stunning.
wow.
Just
Okay, so if I'm going in, is it above Shannon or is it above Dublin on the county of Mayo?
so it's like Dublin is on the east coast.
Right.
So it's kind of like if you were, and it's on the sea, also Dublin. If you were to draw a line across the country to the west coast,
Yeah.
like you go from Dublin straight
Right.
across west, it's like a 4-hour drive.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And from east to west, and so it's in that north because Dublin, right?
Uh-huh.
Not so far above that is Belfast in the UK.
Right.
You know, so this is also, and it's has a tremendous history and just a magical feeling, and traveling like this, pet sitting, is incredible. I mean, I love animals, as I believe you do too.
Yes.
And living in the city, when my cat died, I felt it wasn't fair to have another animal because I have a lovely patio, but I don't have like a garden with dirt and things, you know, for a dog or a cat. And so being able to be with these animals and be someplace and not exchange money, and for the animal owners or animal guardians, you know, for them to be able to travel and know that their animals are loved.
Good point.
And cared for in their own home, with their own routine, with their own, you know, whatever. And, you know, for people like me, being able to go and have this huge dose of kitty love or puppy love or donkey love, you know, and see someplace new and not have to pay for accommodations, and you make these wonderful new friendships.
Now, of course, there's got to be some. I mean, believe me, I know many people that have lots of animals who will not even travel because of that very fact. They don't trust anyone. So here comes the trust factor. How do you pass and let people know that you're trustworthy with their beloved animals?
Well, they do a verification process, and then you get referrals. So when you start a profile, like about you, why you want to do this experience, and then any pet sitting that you've done or experiences you've done outside of them. Like I have friends in Dea now that I live in the city, who when they leave, I come stay in their house and take care of their animals.
So it's references.
So I had them write a couple references. And then on my first house sit, oh my God, she wrote an incredible reference.
Oh,
And,
wonderful.
so it kind of goes like that. But what I heard, so when I first went there, so the woman's name was Martina for my first house. So she had done this before. Everybody she had stay in her house, she said, was fabulous.
Wow.
She left everything out. Nothing was locked.
Uh-huh. Amazing. Amazing.
Like I never went into her private rooms,
Uh-huh.
but it's like it was totally on trust. And I think the kind of people that are drawn to do this are like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an incredible sense of trust. And of course, me, and I think probably like others, I was sending them photos and videos all the time of their animals so they could see them and could know they're okay and, could feel their presence. And, it was really lovely.
So you go to, this is called Pet Sitters, or what's the exact site that you go to?
It's all one word, TrustedHouseSitters.com.
And then you have to sign up. And is there a registration fee for being a part of that site?
Yeah, there's a registration fee, and I think it's like about 85 euros
Uh-huh.
a year. And so you can register as a sitter, or you can register as a homeowner, or you could register as both.
Uh-huh. And then you build your profile, and you put up, there's a place for your profile and your references there, and then people can check you out?
Exactly. So let's say if you're the homeowner, you put in about your home, where it's located, who your animals are, what the responsibilities of the animals are, what's in the local area, like transportation-wise, how people get there, what's around that they might enjoy seeing, what the animals need. And if you're a pet sitter, like me, you put up why you want to do this, who you are, a little bit about yourself, what your experience is with animals. So, and then when you see, like for me as a pet sitter, I say, oh, I'd like to go to wherever, Scotland, Ireland, Italy, but it's all over the world. It's South America, the U.S., Canada, it's everywhere, Australia, New Zealand, Europe. So you put in wherever you'd like to go, and you see what's available, what the dates are, and what the animals are. So like, you can see there's horses, there's donkeys, there's chickens, there's fish, there's dogs, there's cats. So maybe you're not so fond of dogs, but you love cats. So you just go for the ones that have cats.
Amazing. Amazing. I mean, this idea is so brilliant. And the idea of being able to go and, I love to travel. But, I mean, staying at hotels are expensive. It's expensive. That's actually, to me, sometimes the most expensive part, of course, of travel is staying at hotels. And the idea of, even when I've stayed only once at an Airbnb site, and I didn't like it too much. I didn't feel comfortable with it. But, I mean, on something like this, and I paid quite a bit. I mean, I paid quite a bit for this one Airbnb site I stayed at in L.A. when I was going to L.A. But this idea where you don't pay anything and you get to know the country. I mean, you were like really part of a private neighborhood, and I bet you made some friends there, right?
I did, and I had such a nice compliment in one of the cafes. They thought I lived there because I felt like such a local to them. But, the owners, they give you like, oh, this is the great cafe, this is the great restaurant, you want to see this, and how to get there and how to do it. So it feels so cozy. And you come home and you're with these animals and you're cuddling with them and you make sure they have whatever they need. And for me, when I was there this winter, it was with a Spanish Podenco dog, a beautiful hound. Oh, my God, she was gorgeous. So I got in the most incredible shape because we were walking an hour and a half every day.
Wow.
Through the woods, around a lake, up a river. It was an incredible landscape, and it was a precious dog. And when the owners came back, because we had a couple days together before I went home, just so we could exchange stories, they said, oh, my God, it's like a Zen dog. They couldn't believe it. And she told told me after I left how the dog kept looking for me. So that was so nice. But it also made them feel like they didn't abandon their dog.
Yeah.
You know,
So
their dog
where was that
okay.
second stay in Ireland? Explain where that was, and where did you go there? I want to hear a little bit more about Ireland because I love Ireland so much. So where was the second stay?
So the second stay was in this village called Westport. And in my first stay, Martina told me her mother was from Westport. And she said, you have got to go visit Westport. So when I was there in the summer, I visited Westport. And of course, you know, being in Spain, the bookstores here are all Spanish. So I was in heaven with English bookstores.
Ah.
And there was like 5 or 6 of them in the town. And I like went to 3 and
Wow.
filled up my suitcase with books. But one of the books I got was about Grace O'Malley, the pirate queen of Ireland.
Oh, wow.
So Grace O'Malley, she lived 1535 to 1603. She was a real pirate.
Wow.
Her father was a pirate. And, she was only the second woman pilot, I think, in the history. And commanded all these men. And her brothers weren't interested. So, they pirated, they pillaged, you know, they raided villages and whatnot. And she was so fierce that England was trying to, of course, take over Ireland at the time, and they were trying to squash her work. And she anyway, there's big trouble. So she snuck over to England. This is when that was Queen Elizabeth I, and her countrymen were so afraid for her that she would either be assassinated or imprisoned. But she wanted to meet with Queen Elizabeth first, and she did. And Queen Elizabeth was so taken with her. It's like, here are these 2 powerful women running, you know, empires.
It would be an amazing movie. They've got to do a movie on that.
It should be.
It
So
should.
Queen Elizabeth introduced her to her own personal pirate, who was Sir Francis Bacon.
Of course.
And
Wow.
so Grace O'Malley formed this alliance with Francis Bacon and came back and da-da-da. Well, the house that I stayed at, the woman who owned the house and the dog where I stayed was the great, 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 great granddaughter of this pirate
Amazing.
queen.
Amazing
And it
story.
was on her estate, the Pirate Queen's estate,
Oh, God, amazing story.
which is now like a museum. So it was like, oh, my goodness.
What
How
a,
the universe
what an
was-
experience. My God. Well, and you said the
know.
chieftains, of course. I love the chieftains. Did you get out and get to hear some music in the local pubs?
I did, and it was called Matt Malloy's Pub in Westport, and he's one of the chieftains. And one of the nights I went there, he was there. They have traditional Irish music every night. But when I first came this summer, I spent the night in Dublin at Trinity College, because during the summer
Wow.
they allow, you know, they rent out the student housing, so it was very affordable and fabulous. And the Trinity Library with the Book of Kells and the
Wow.
whole history. And I did 2 tours through TripAdvisor. One was for the Trinity Library, the Book of Kells, and the surrounding area of Temple Bar and stuff in Dublin. And another was a pub crawl. And a pub crawl with traditional Irish music. And it was so fabulous. And it was 2 men who were leading this pub crawl. So we went to 3 pubs and, you know, Irish music throughout, but traditional. And one of them is with river dance.
Wow. Amazing.
And it was so nice getting this education. And they were talking about how there's only a few places in Ireland where there's really only traditional Irish music. And one of them is Westport, and it was Mike O'Malley's.
Wow. I've heard of it.
And
It's very
so-
famous. Very famous. Yeah.
Very famous. And, yeah, so that was fabulous.
Well, it seems like you love Ireland as much as I do. I've only been once, and I've been wanting to get back. In fact, I was really thinking of trying to do it this fall again. But now, you know, at this point, I don't know if I'll be able to. I just had an interview with a guy that's so nice. Mark Nolan's the general manager of the Dromoland Castle, which is 45 minutes above Shannon Airport. Maybe less, about a half hour above. And it's a 650-year-old castle with 600 acres up there. I stayed there last time, and they're just reopening too. But, you know, right now you can't go to Ireland without, if you're from America, without a 14-day quarantine. So that's 2 weeks right there. So It's we don't know when it's going to change. So even though I want to go, you do it not knowing if you'd have to cancel, and that's the way the status is right now, and until we find out what's the story, because Europe still is not allowing people to come without the 14-day quarantine. I think only Turkey, Egypt, Mexico, Tahiti are allowing people in if you have a negative test of COVID-19. But for the rest of the countries and Europe, I'm sure it's probably the same in Mallorca.
Probably.
Do you have the same rules in Mallorca as Spain does, or do you have a separate set of rules for COVID-19?
No, the islands wanted to get a separate ruling because we were so good, and the Canary Islands also, but no. Because they said too many other provinces and mainland Spain would want to, and it would be too complicated. So they're universal, except where they're having these lockdowns now on the mainland where they've had outbreaks.
Yeah. The mainlands there would be, on Spain and other places like that might be having a new outbreaks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a whole different way, and I have to say I miss travel so much. I think the first place I will go when I come back will be Ireland, and I'll stay on the West Coast. And I have never, I thought they even have tours. I thought of doing this where you can go horseback riding from one small little, it's almost like a B&B horseback riding tour of the country. You go from one place to another, and you ride each area between each stay, right? And which I thought that'd be kind of cool, seeing the country on horseback and riding from a place to another. But yeah, everything's on hold. But I just, when I heard about you talking about this amazing opportunity with pet sitting, I really was just like, oh my gosh, this is just an amazing opportunity for people. And it really. Oh, and I saw something on your site. You said, if you would like to try it as a pet sitter or as a pet owner who needs loving care for your animals while you're away, use my code to receive a 25% discount on the membership fee. Now, is that still available for anyone?
It's available for anyone. So anybody that uses my code, they get a 25% discount on their membership fee, and I get 2 free months.
Amazing.
Extended on mine.
What's your membership code?
Oh, it's in the newsletter. I have to look it up.
Well, I had the newsletter I copied, but the code didn't come down through this. I copied the story, but the code didn't come through.
Okay, well,
I'm looking at it.
Let me get it. It'll just take me a second.
Okay, here I got a website link with my discount code.
So it's the numbers in the code. So let me.
It's
my
TrustedHouseSitters.com /refer/RAF 264 264104. Why don't you repeat that one more time?
Right. So my discount code, my code to get a 25% discount is RAF as in Frank 264104.
So you go to
And
Trusted
the
House Sitters.
website is TrustedHouseSitters.com. And there are also just some house sits without pets.
I think it sounds fantastic. I am so glad we got a chance to talk, Robin.
Me too. And because you mentioned horses, I've got to tell you about this documentary that I just saw. And I was in tears. It was so tender and beautiful. And it's free, and it's on YouTube, and it's called Herd, Herd.
I've got to watch it. I love horses.
It's about a woman in Canada who brings people there for retreat. Anyway, you watch it.
I will.
You'll love it.
Well, big hugs across the land, water, seas, and distance to where you are. I miss you, and I'm so glad we got a chance to talk.
Me too. I miss you too. I love you.
Love you too.
And give my good wishes to John also.
I will. And people go to greatmysteries.org for your wonderful site. God bless you, and thank you, Robin.
Okay. Bless you. Love you.
Love you
Bye.
too. Aloha.
Aloha.